I agree with Donald Trump. We should have voter ID. Here's how and why. We should have voter ID. Here's how and why. When he shut down his controversial Voter Integrity Commission, President Trump went to Twitter, as he is wont to do, and argued the need for voter identification. He is right, we should have a voter ID system. And there is a way to do it that could well be applauded by everyone from Trump to election administrators to all who value the right to vote. I propose a national identification card to be issued by the government to all citizens of the United States when they turn 16. This identification would serve not only as required voter identification when someone reaches voting age, it would also serve as their voter registration. There are many benefits to this proposal, including one that should appeal to Trump, reinforcing a virtual wall to better track who is and is not an American citizen. Many democracies around the world have national identity cards, while experiencing no ill tendencies towards authoritarianism. Indeed, my proposal echoes one made by former President Jimmy Carter. Following the 2000 election, the Carter-Baker Commission issued a number of recommendations, including voter identification. If and this is an important condition, all persons are given identification. Having the government take responsibility for voter registration is actually a very old idea. It is how elections were run during America's first century as a country. Local governments created lists of the people who owned property or paid taxes, which defined the eligible voters. Making the government responsible for registering voters again would solve many election administration problems. True universal registration would obliterate the burden on individuals to register, and to re-register whenever they move. Numerous studies find reducing voter registration costs increases voter turnout. Democracy works best when citizenry is engaged. Inconsistent laws governing voter registration across states would be wiped away. The more complex state laws alleged to be particularly burdensome on voters would disappear, thereby laying to rest lengthy and expensive litigation that taxpayers ultimately pay for. Numerous anecdotal stories exist of individuals hired by organizations aligned with both political parties faking or throwing away voter registration forms. Registration fraud would be no more. Existing voter registration organizations could refocus their costly registration efforts into more productive activities of educating them about elections and mobilizing people to vote. The left is fearful that only half of my proposal would be adopted, requiring voter identification. Indeed, Trump is incorrect that identification isn't required for voting. There are federal ID requirements for first-time voters, and a number of states have adopted particularly strict photo ID requirements. In lawsuits challenging state laws, evidence shows upwards to 10% of eligible voters don't have driver's licenses or other forms of required photo ID. This is because these people don't need these IDs, or it is difficult for them to obtain them. Courts have even found some states violated the Voting Rights Act by intentionally limiting racial groups' access to the identification. A national identity card can work only as voter registration and required ID if everyone gets it. Even then, there may be reasons to need a backup if a person loses their identification. The courts have allowed states to implement strict voter identification,